Preacher Moss, host of the S.O.S, the ShOUT show. Listen, we have an amazing show lined up for you today. Personal friend, entrepreneur, businessman, music producer. We're talking about the one and only Mark Cannady, better known as Jelani Locks. We have him on the show for the hour. Of course, I'm going to tell you in advance, it's not enough time. We're going to be talking politics. We're going to be talking art, culture, small business. I named the show Life and Times of Small Business, and I did it because he brought something to my attention. Initially, we were talking about this business idea that he had. I have to say I was a little small-minded, and I wasn't really looking at the landscape of what he was talking about. So for that, I'm going to apologize to him personally here on the show. But the thing I want to make sure that you understand is what we're going to talk about, the aspect of not just small business, but we're talking about the ability to create wealth in adverse conditions. And when I say adverse conditions, I'm not talking about just the economy. I'm talking about the overall political landscape of how minorities, black, brown, and other have been able to put businesses together, but also some of the hurdles that they have, some of the obstacles that they have. This show will focus on this one idea that he has, but he's had many. So I want everybody to know I've known Mark for quite a long time. So the banter is organic, it's original, it is sincere. But we've had some things that we haven't agreed on, and I think it's fun because some of the things we haven't agreed on have led me to this point. And when I say I actually have to apologize to him because I have to look at the scope in terms of markets, opportunities, the politics, the laws. And, I'm happy to say that my brother is extremely astute in business. He's a tech advocate. Tech advocate. He's a small business advocate. He ran for state senator in the state of Virginia. This is something I think everybody needs to understand. We got a rare individual on the show. That's number one. Number two, I want to apologize because the people jumped on me and I realized it after the fact that we did not have our annual Mother's Day show. We did not have it. Being that we moved to a new format, our Sunday, we did not have our Mother's Day show. So what I'm going to do is possibly next week, we're going to just take a small portion just to celebrate moms, just to make sure that we're doing our part to celebrate the women in our lives, the women who have led us, fed us, guided us, scolded us, whooped us, but inspired us to be better people. So I got to get out of here because the show is rolling. Listen, stay tuned. I'm bringing on the one, the only Mark Cannady. We're talking about life and times of small business, but we're talking about a lot more here on the ShOUT Show. Don't you move.
Sponsor an orphan, and you'll help support a vulnerable child to have the education they've always dreamed of, so they can build a brighter future. You'll be feeding a hungry stomach and a hungry mind with knowledge that will last them a lifetime. That's the power of an education. Sponsor an orphan now with Islamic Relief.
All right. Boy, I tell you. At least I'm on time here, Mark. At least I'm on time.
I thought we had to clear the room for a minute, man.
Hey, man. I listen. I think because I have all of these alarms and going between different time zones, trying to wake up for prayer, trying to do meetings, things like that. I either feel like I'm really, really early or I'm extremely late.
I was ready to shelter in place, man. I didn't know what was going
Hey,
on.
man. You know what? Sometimes it feels like sheltering in place. Uh, Ladies and gentlemen, we're back with my main man, Mark Cannady. Mark, let me get some love to our comment section, better known as the Shout Out Show. We got Mama Moss. Let's go ahead and put that up there. She says, welcome to the Shout Out Show, Mark. Anxiously await your tidbits of success. Proud mom. All right. She just woke up like 6 minutes ago, so let's give her some props. She actually got on the computer. Alhamdulillah, there's hope for her. Hope for our senior brothers and sisters to get up on the computer with less than 2 minutes before the show. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Main man, my shout out to Altaf Rashid, better known as special envoy to the shout out show, Canadian envoy. We can't do without you, Mr. 6 o'clock. Mr. Straight up, straight down, making sure the quality of the show is good on this side of the border and that side of the border, please, brother Altaf. And I say, well, I my salad off Patua, but make sure our Canadian family knows that they got a lot of love coming from the Shout Out Show, myself, Sister Satana, and of course, our visitor today, our special guest, Mr. Mark Cannady. Next up, why my salad off Patua, but Johnny L. Thomas, that's his government name, but to me, he's always going to be JT. What's going on, beloved? Man, thank you so much for coming on the show. I told everybody, everybody knows, JT just started a new position. He's doing auditing for the government, and I'm just happy for him. I don't even expect to see you on the show, brother. Man, you're working stiff now. In fact, this whole thing has ruined our dynamic when I come to Milwaukee because we can't go get breakfast at 10 o'clock. Now we know like we normally used to. So now we have to change up our diet. Mark, see how that goes? See how black folk mess up.
Man, you gotta do what you gotta do.
You see how black folk mess up your program with responsibility and accountability? I hate when that happens. Shout out, big brother Bilal Salahuddin. What's going on? Why I my salon off for too little bit of time. Nobody says we're in here. You need to say you and your queen are in there, Bilal. Stop saying we. No pronouns. This is Ron DeSantis Day. No pronouns. You say, me and my queen are in here today. Shout out to Sister Sonia Dalton Salahuddin. Big sis, hope y'all are doing. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Peace and blessings to you and the family. And I love that picture that you sent with the grandbabies for Mother's Day. I'm going to have to share that with your permission, if that's okay. My main man, Eric Carter, all the way down from South Carolina. Brother Eric, thank you so much for joining us, man. We appreciate you as always. Hope that you and your family had a blessed holiday, blessed Mother's Day. Thank you so much for tuning in. And we cannot forget the one that only, Satana Whitfield, our executive producer here on the show. While I my slide off of Tua Barakata, and I hope that you guys, I hope you got Mama Whitfield something that she wanted and appreciated.
All right.
And I will be checking. And I'm gonna make sure that you took care of that E thing, the iftar thing too. I'm gonna make sure you weren't burning up Mama's money. You be kind of slippery. So Mark got a whole cup. You know what? This is how we're rolling today. I got Dizzy behind me because I know I'm gonna get something traditional from you. I'm gonna get something traditional from you, but I'm gonna get something off the cuff. Now, to begin this conversation, let me apologize. This is why I apologize. Because we talked about a concept. Now, people, relax. We talked about a concept called the Black Weed Show. And what I was not listening to was the fact that A, this is a very large concept, and B, understanding the modality for Black businesses to find different avenues of revenue. Now, we can talk about the whatever. We talk about the aspect of that later, but I did some research, and I said to myself, I owe the man an apology. I owe you an apology, Mark. I did the research, and what you're doing is actually pretty pioneering. So can I throw that out there?
Yes, sir. I appreciate it.
So please accept my apology.
You don't have to apologize, Preach. We've had a lot of good ideas through the years.
Exactly. But I apologize in case your wife is listening, your queen is listening. So let's start up, man. You're from a military family, Air
Yes,
Force.
absolutely. Um,
Mama Cannady, Pop Cannady. Uh,
yes, the families out of Washington, D.C. By
what
way of
side? What side? Is it northwest, northeast,
Northeast.
northeast?
Northeast. But was Northwest. My great grandparents came to D.C. in 1918,
Yeah. I mean,
right?
so
Brought their two daughters up here. One of them's my grandmother. Her name was Mabel. The other's my great aunt, Beulah. Left the oldest daughter down in New Orleans. Her name was Hilda.
okay,
My aunt Boo, which you call Beulah, she had 16 kids, and my grandmother had 5 children. And one is my father, John,
16
the
kids.
youngest boy. Yeah.
16, now I'm just saying. You say 16 kids. It makes my back hurt out.
My aunt Boo had 16 kids. Those are the Jacksons.
It's
A
just,
lot of
it's
them.
just, it's just, it's just 16 kids, Mark. It's just 16 kids.
Hey, Uncle
Let me ask
Fred
you a
didn't mess
question.
around. He had some land out in Maryland. They still have it.
Let me ask you a question though. Just at that space of being a part of a military family, your father in the Air Force, your mom being a military wife, how does that begin to spawn out this whole idea of entrepreneurism? I mean, I see you and I know, and we laugh, that
Mhm.
we say we don't want a job. JOB means just over broke. We have always been in this whole thing about understanding the aspect of being an entrepreneur, but also understand the aspect of small business.
Yes,
Because to get to be big business, you usually start out small business.
they all start out small and then they become big. And I think also as a small business person, well, put it this way, my family. Uh-oh, did I lose myself there? My family
Yeah.
always have been involved in business. My older brother John, when we were overseas in England, was a DJ. He used to DJ at all the military clubs,
Mm-hmm.
high schools overseas in England, and then all the clubs. And when we came back here to the States after 5 years in England, he graduated. He and my next older brother went out to Las Vegas, and from Vegas they went to the West Coast. He kept doing this DJing thing and eventually got into booking shows and concerts. We're talking. This is at the advent of hip hop, right before hip hop started. I mean,
So
he booked every major hip hop artist you can think of, from the Fresh Prince to you name it, LL Cool J. I mean, we did everybody, the Fat Boys, R&B acts, jazz acts.
now you were doing those over in the UK.
Huh?
You were doing those over in the UK. You were doing them here.
Actually, in the UK, we were doing discoing because
Mm.
disco was still the thing. I was in England from 72 to 76, almost 5 years. And when we came back here to the States, I was still in high school. I was a junior. My brother graduated. My oldest brother John graduated high school over there. Then I had my next brother who was in between me, was Tony. He graduated at Pease Air Force Base in New Hampshire. And when he graduated, both of them got this souped up automobile called a Cavell or whatever it was, and went out to the West Coast, to Las Vegas and to and he ended up being in Los Angeles. But he actually started out in Las Vegas because their girlfriends were in Las Vegas. A lot of the friends that we had overseas, they were actually from the West Coast. So when everybody came back from England, they went out there to catch up really with. They were chasing their women. And then John stayed out. he did. He stayed out in Vegas for like over 20 years. Tony stayed out, but he stayed in Vegas for about a year, and then he moved to the Gold Coast in California, actually Ventura. And
Ventura.
Anthony came back this way. But actually, while he was on the West Coast, we moved from doing a lot of discos and things of that nature to the advent of hip hop, and we started booking a lot of hip hop acts. Hip hop was just starting to hit. We're talking like 1977, 78. I came out of school 78 in high school, and by then, hip hop was just starting to hit hard.
So hip hop was hitting then. Well,
Yeah.
let me ask you this question. DC was kicking off with go-go.
We were doing some go-go, but
It wasn't as widespread. I'm just saying 77, 78, you got Chuck Brown,
mhm.
Bust Loose. We had that. But EU was a funk band. Wasn't a go-go band.
Well, we did Chuck Brown, but believe it or not, it's kind of funny. My mother used to come back to the States. And when she came back to the States, she used to go to my Uncle Howie's record store and she would bring a bunch of records back overseas to England to us. And one of them was I Feel Like Bustin' Loose by Chuck Brown. And as you know, that's people call it go-go, but go-go is really an event. Chuck Brown's R&B track at that time, and you can call it go-go too, being the godfather of go-go, really just was starting to really create a thing for itself. But people have been doing go-go for years. Matter of fact, I was just talking about that the other day with some partners. Go-go is a thing that happens. Chuck Brown is the godfather of that.
And go-go is an event.
Go-go is an event.
I'm not even. Yeah, listen.
Mhm.
Whole social patterns of dating and engaging have been framed around go-go. So I mean, it was just, I think it was this whole cultural thing. But I don't want to get too far off
Yep.
the track, man, because you're talking about promotion and things that are really, really important. But it gives us this lead in, if you will, that you began to look at wider spaces. One of them is really important, that you got into the tech space.
Yep.
I've known you to be in the tech space for years. Questions I've had for everything about cybersecurity to Salesforce. I've talked to you about it. You were a guy talking about um, cryptocurrency, things like that, going back, a ton of years. Before it became popular. What is your secret, Mark? And I don't want to say secret. Maybe what's your process for being able to look at some of these things that are coming down the pike and saying that one has value, that one has potential. Nah, I definitely want to invest in that. Because cybersecurity is not really a big thing that we were talking about 15 years ago.
I'll tell you, preach. And I know I'm getting so warm in here. I hadn't been in my office in here. I came right off the road and came in here, and actually it's kind of warm in here. So pardon me as I kind of wipe away the moisture. Anyway, I actually got into the tech space because I was managing acts and had started a label when I got out of college. I finished at Hampton Institute, old school HI, now Hampton University, and things were going well. We put out tracks on DJ Mellow T. We did some tracks with DC Scorpio here in the DC area. Both go-go acts. Also, DJ Cool was on one of the tracks with DJ Mellow T. But we did go-go. We did hip-hop. We released these tracks in the area. But the wife said, you know what? This is doing all right, but you need to do some other things still. So I was like, okay, let me go and do a little bit of technology. Because when I first got out of college, I really worked for Radio Shack for a while in the computer center.
You work for who?
Key Martin. That's right. Why are you laughing about Radio Shack, man? I was a manager at a computer center for Radio Shack.
Know how old you are.
When I went to work for Radio Shack.
Hold a minute, Mark.
Okay, go ahead.
If you don't know about Radio Shack, go to Wikipedia and you'll see Mark with a name tag in the picture.
Dude, I was assistant manager at a Radio Shack computer center in Springfield. And the year they introduced the first PC, the Tandy 1000. That's how I got into the business. Went on to manage computer centers in downtown DC, Tyson's, a lot of other places. But actually, that's what led me to Lockheed Martin eventually, where I was there for almost 20 years doing all the stuff you talked about. In 2013, I started my own company, just doing my own government contracting work. That's how I got there.
Give a shout out to the company, bro.
The Jelani Networks company.
There you go. There you go.
Same as the label, the Johnny Locks Records, and a couple of other things too. But that's how I really got into that space.
Well, Mark, we're going to take a quick break, man. Don't go anywhere. People, we're just getting started. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back here on the Shout Out Show with my main man, Mark Cannady. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm comedian Preacher Moss. I hope you're having a blessed Ramadan. Listen, I just want to take a couple of minutes of your time to talk about Olive Branch Muslim Family Services. You know, Olive Branch Muslim Family Services represents a lot in the city of Houston. You have a lot of relief organizations throughout the country, throughout the state. But I have to say, Olive Branch Muslim Family Services is one for the home team of the city of Houston. Listen, let me tell you about myself. I've always lived this idea that I'm always going to have more blessings than I'm going to have problems. And in that space, I've been able to understand that the blessings sometimes mean I can be a blessing in somebody else's life, much the same with Olive Branch Muslim Family Services. Years ago, maybe 2 years ago, we had a video and it asked the profound question, imagine if it wasn't an olive branch. Not so much the organization, but the absence of compassion and mercy. Imagine if there wasn't an olive branch. Not so much a question, but a reminder of prophetic tradition that all of our prophets who have come came to advocate for the poor and uplift the suffering. Imagine if there wasn't an olive branch. Thinking about that. OBMFS. I changed the letters from Olive Branch Muslim Family Services and dug a little deeper, thinking about that prophetic tradition. So Olive Branch Muslim Family Services is really Olive Branch's mission is family success. We need your help. While you're writing out that check, brothers and sisters, think about that. What's a world without compassion? What's good music without good instruments? What's a president that's distrustful and not honest? Okay, let me get back focused. In any event, imagine if there wasn't an olive branch. Let me remind you.
We just need help.
Imagine if there wasn't an olive branch. Muslim Family Services at your command. The people who help people have to say, we need your donations, don't delay. We all have struggles from time to time, but leaders dedicated is what you find. Before another person sheds a tear, support Olive Branch, you don't have to fear. Olive Branch Muslim Family Services. Action you can see, compassion you can feel. Sing it with me. Ooh. Ooh.
All right, Mark. Shout out to Olive Branch Muslim Family Services, doing a tremendous amount of good work in the city of Houston. May Allah continue to guide you and give you success. Mark, we are back. We were talking about this whole aspect of tech. Let me ask you a question, Mark. You're talking about opening up your own company in 2013. And a lot of people think, oh, I got to go to school. I got to get my... What did you study in school, let me ask, before we even go further than that?
Well, Preach, I actually started the Jelani networks, originally named Jelani Management, because when I was working at Radio Shack for many years, for at least 2 years, I had built up a lot of customers because back then there weren't a lot of services. People would buy computers and they would need people to set them up. And I had gotten so much business from customers at Radio Shack that wanted me to do that. So I eventually just started my own little Soho where I would sell them the computers and then they'd ask me to come out to their business or to their homes and set up the computers, load up software, get it working. It wasn't like it is now. And so that's how I got started in doing consulting services, really from Radio Shack.
And what did you study in Hampton?
Nothing to do with computers. At Hampton, I was a political science major. I was pre-law. I went pre-law and English minor. Graduated, applied to law school, got accepted at law school at the Washington School of Law at American University. But at the time, my girlfriend and I decided to go ahead and get married. So I actually got married coming out of Hampton that same summer in August.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, let me ask you a question, man. With technology, what is it about our folks that we're not first adopters of this technology that's coming out?
Well, I think we're first adopters of the technology. I mean, when we talk, I'm talking back at that time.
Well, I would say not enough of us are first adopters. Let me correct that.
I guess you're talking about not people using the technology like social media, but people actually opening up businesses around technology or being involved in it. And I think there were a lot of, I went into government contracting. And I can tell you in the 80s, there were a lot of very large, successful African American owned firms that were in the technology area. Herman Valentine's with S.O.S. There was Joshua Smith with Maximus Corporate. These were government contracting firms at the time that had 7,000 employees. And that's just another part of what I do in another part of my life. As you know, one of the things that I do when I wear my other hat as an activist and an organizer is I work with as the chair for the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus. And a lot of things that we try to do is to grow small businesses in the state of Virginia and across the country underneath what the Democrats do. But in particular, there are different folks within those small business community. I'm an African American. I work a lot on trying to get more opportunities for African Americans in small business or small businesses in technology and other different areas. So one of the things we're working on is really looking at not just getting people elected, but also making sure that the acquisition laws are better for people trying to get federal contracts in the area of technology and other areas, as well as on a state level and a local level. So I work in Fairfax County locally. I work on a state basis with state senators and delegates, and also working with our congressmen and senators to get them to take up changes that will provide more and better opportunities and give us an even playing field when it comes to securing contracts, because the largest buyer of services and products in our area is the federal government. They're the largest in the country, actually. And
Let me ask you this question. Given the current political climate, which is tenuous on a good day, what are
Yep.
some of the dangers to this aspect of what you're doing with small businesses? What are some of the things that concern you?
Well, the things that concern me with small businesses is that we're getting our fair share, that African Americans are organized. I mean, when I talk about being an activist and an organizer, I think people wear three hats. They come first as a Democrat, because I'm a Democrat. They also come as an activist, whatever thing that's kind of, your reason for why you do what you do. In my case, it's small business, generation wealth. And then, of course, you bring yourself, just being you as a family member and a small business owner. Now, the point I'm making here is, if we don't organize ourselves as African Americans to make sure that we're getting our proper amount of tax dollars back from our businesses. Let me give you an example. There's a $1.2 trillion annual budget for the United States government, right? Every year, 1.2 trillion, almost, a little more than 1.2 trillion. Are we getting our fair share of that in services and products that the government is buying from African Americans, which make up about 15% of the population? Do the numbers. You take 15% of 1 trillion, we're not getting anywhere near that amount. But that requires that we get organized as far as folks on the outside, working with our congressional folks, making sure that we're actually making the request, making the ask for things that get funded, that go back to our community, either to our businesses, through our HBCUs, things that are out there specifically that we would benefit from, and we can also create generational wealth. And that's just with the federal government.
I understand that. So
Right.
let's get to the politics of it.
Okay.
Okay, we have President Biden, not necessarily popular on a lot of people's agendas. We have a debt ceiling that we're looking at right now.
Yeah.
Which we're not. I don't know if we're talking about it enough. I don't know if people know exactly what it is a debt ceiling refers to, and how it affects how we pay our bills around the world, our credit rating, things like that. Because we live in a civil service town. My mom and dad work for the government. My dad worked for NIH. My mom worked for Health and Human Services. So we know variably what it is when the government shuts down, or when the budget isn't there. But there's the conundrum now is you have, to me, you have a Congress that's not really focused on necessarily serving the people. Now, I don't want to make it seem partisan, but I'm like, yeah, it doesn't add up when you're talking about going and trying to debate about a debt ceiling. Basically, we had a president last year or a couple years ago. He bumped the ceiling up every time, no tax cuts. Now we're going, we need tax cuts. And I'm like, somewhere in the balance, man, the people, the will of the people is being lost. You know, can you talk about what the politics of that is in terms of how it can affect us?
Well, Preach, you asked the question of the debt ceiling. The debt ceiling is about money that has the United States government has already spent and obligated itself to. The debt ceiling is all about we need to raise the debt ceiling because we've spent more money than we have available. So
Mm-hmm.
how the government goes about doing that, either they should just pass a law permanently so it doesn't get politicized, where as soon as the debt ceiling thing happens, they automatically raise the debt ceiling to pay for money we've already spent. This is a credit card that the United States has already used. In this case, the Republicans ran up this debt. And when it comes time to pay it, because there's a Democratic president in office and the Republicans are controlling the House of Representatives, and the House of Representatives, the legislative body controls the power of the purse. For years, every time this particular time of year happens, we raise the debt limit, which means they're able to print more money to pay for our bills. That's all that is.
Right.
And if we don't do that, it could cause a lot of bad financial things to happen with respect to raising rates and other things like that. So the Republicans are trying to use that to force the president to cutting things that people need in Social Security or other benefits and things that are out there for working people. The reason why that debt ceiling is up as high as it is because when the Republicans were in office, they cut all the taxes for very wealthy people. And now when it comes time to actually pay for things you've already purchased, you have to raise the debt ceiling. So
Right.
there's a short story.
And it's not a pleasant one.
Not a pleasant one, but let me say this about Biden, because you said something earlier about Biden. Now, Biden has agreed to raise money that's going to historically Black colleges and universities have gone up to $150 million, I believe. There's lots of resources and money that's out there with the American Rescue Plan for small businesses. But I like to talk specifically for African Americans, and that always goes back to appropriations. Yeah, you can pass a law, you got to fund that law, but then after that, you need to make sure that they put money in it. And one of the things that they have done for historically Black colleges and universities have raised the amount of money that they're getting. And matter of fact, this year, I think legislation was introduced to raise that number up to $500 million to HBCUs this year. And that's just one area. That doesn't even cover the other areas where, I've talked about opportunities that should be out there for African Americans to do business with the federal government. And basically, when I tell people this, you're not coming with your hat in your hands. You're basically coming saying that's your tax money. There's no reason for Lockheed Martin or Raytheon or any other large company to run off with all of those tax dollars, when in fact they should be spending some of those things in the African American community, lowering the cost of college and putting more Pell Grant money or money out there that, or either putting money out there where Biden tried to at least put $10,000 out there for student debt that's out there. So I think the Democrats are doing what they can. Can they do more? Yes, but
I hope so. I mean, every time we have these conversations, Mark, it's like I gotta get off the phone or I gotta get off the computer to start another business.
Well, listen, you have to be out there, looking for opportunities.
But I think people need to understand that one aspect or one pathway, a major pathway to generational wealth, is you have to start businesses.
Yes,
you have to take the plunge and start businesses. You can't work for someone else in many cases and expect to have generational wealth.
Well, you need to have a side hustle out there, even if you do have a job, because a job is not guaranteed that it will always be there. So I
Exactly.
tell all the young people and the older people, create an LLC. Make
Say
sure,
that again, please.
huh?
That, that should be over go beat.
Exactly.
LLC, y'all. We said LLC now.
They can turn 15 cents into a dollar, right? So,
Yeah,
but you have to have that. If you don't get out there and start some sort of LLC or small business and create some sort of hustle for yourself, that's how you lower your taxes, because the people have the best tax benefits. If you don't have an LLC, you can only really get that through home ownership. Other than that, it has to really through starting a business. The best tax advantages that are out there for small business and large business. So you need to have one. Every kid should graduate, in my mind, when he walks across the stage. He should have his LLC. He should have his voting. He should have his voter registration card, and he should be looking to start his business as soon as he gets out of school or while he's in school. And even if he's not doing a whole lot with it, the fact that the infrastructure is in place as
exactly.
he goes to start down his career, he's got everything in place to be able to be independent, at least start heading down that road.
So I mean, like as a comedian, we learn late about the whole aspect of building a business because we're in a culture whereby we believe everything derived as a comedian is going to come from the scope of being on stage, it's going to come from the scope of touring, things like that. It was later in the game for a lot of us, particularly African American comedians, that we were, and I think we still are in some regards, kind of disjointed from the history of the older comedians, the Toba comedians, Toba, tough on black
Yeah,
asses, which meant that all the theater owners were Jewish, but it was the moms Mabley, the Mount Mableys, if you will, and the Red Foxes, if you will, that started their own venues and began creating this stuff. And it begins the same thing, with jazz. I look at jazz because jazz has that thing, jazz has that Miles. Like Miles is like, I'm going to come to an arena, and if the vendors aren't black, I'm not going to play. Flexing that kind of power. I
right,
think,
right.
for me, I feel that, so as much as I heard Miles, I could read autobiography of Malcolm X and feel the same type of urgency. Um, Even as an artist, it's like, yo, if you're an artist, if your business is correct, you need to develop other artists for no other reason to create this sphere of competition, which helps you set a price for what you do.
Absolutely. Every artist is a small business. Every artist he's out there, he's working for someone else. He's not working as an employee. Most of
Yeah,
these folks don't work directly in the creative sphere as a W-2. Those folks who are artists who are in front of cameras and doing things, most of them are, they're working for themselves. So they need to be handling their business and looking forward to building that business out. So if you have the proper infrastructure in place, you're ready to go. And listen, it is so easy to do business and set up with the federal government. I'm willing to take anybody through any through the basic steps that they need to do to start doing business with the federal government. Happy to do that, and it doesn't cost them a dime. They need to. I tell people all the time, you need to start a business account. Stick $500, start a business account. Go out to sam.gov, register your business. After you register your business, you get your cage code so the government is able to pay you the money. And then you start going after those trillions of dollars that the government is spending every year. And make sure that you have working with folks who are mentors who can show you how to secure some of that business, no matter what you do, whether it's a service or a product. Government buys everything, and you need to get your share of that money.
all right. So we're gonna be we're gonna be shortening up the show because Mark and I are gonna go make some money. I know the show normally goes an hour, but today we're only going 40 minutes. Thank you, no, I'm just kidding. This is Mark. We're going to take a break, and we're going to talk about this idea that you brought to me. Of course, when I first heard it, I had my reservations, but I'm a creative, so I've thought differently about this thing. We're going to talk about Mark's the whole idea of a cannabis communication company, the Black
Yes.
Weed Show, is more than just a show, man. This thing is a bit of a movement. I watched some of your video with some of the councils you were involved with. I'm like, you know, you think weed, cannabis, we just think it's getting high. Man,
No, way,
this
way more than that.
this is a business. Now, I'm Muslim, so I can't partake in this thing at all, but I'm going to have this conversation with you because it needs to be said. We need to be able to separate some aspects
Well,
of
we
this.
do, preacher. I want when we come back, I will make that separation because I know my good Muslim brothers and sisters and folks. There's a difference between alcohol that is used for pharmaceutical and medicine
Yes,
purposes
yes, yes.
and what it can be done. But you can do other things with alcohol as well, as you well know. And that's
Yeah.
what I try to explain to people. But I
Well,
know
people need to know this rubbing alcohol and
exactly.
then there's Johnny Walker.
They're not the same plant, but not the same thing.
Be rubbing the fifth on the elbow. It feels better.
Exactly.
I broke my leg, but I can't feel it. That's because you're drunk. That's wrong alcohol. All right. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Don't you move. I'm here on the show, the Shout Out Show. My main
Yeah,
man.
I talk voting rights too, man. I got to cover that before we go.
All right.
Man.
We're going to cover voting rights too. We're going to be right back here on the Shout Out Show. Don't you move.
Okay.
Hey, babies. Welcome to Radio WCUC, Convenient Urgent Care, home of the smart patient. This is DJ What It Do. You know what time it is. It's the top of the hour, and the request lines are open. You know what you want to hear. I know what you want to hear. Operators are waiting.
I just gotta hear don't get the COVID.
Don't get the COVID. Put your mask back on. The Delta COVID, more contagious than before. Don't get the COVID. Go on and get the vaccine. You know that it can keep you safe. And your people living up in your space. Don't get the COVID. You need to wash your hands. The Delta COVID is more deadly than before. Don't get the COVID. Go on and get your vaccine. You know that it can keep you from dying. Don't leave your family all alone and crying. Don't get the COVID.
We invite you to join our fight against COVID and against misinformation. It's time to listen to the doctors and trust the science.
When I think of people dying that don't have to die, it makes me sad. Now is the time to be sober. Together we can make this thing over. Let's fight the COVID. Convenient urgent care, home of the smart patient.
All right, we're back. Shout out to Convenient Urgent Care, my main man, Jazz Saeed. Feel better, brother. Feel better. I hope he runs the place, and now he's a patient. So I hope you feel better, beloved. So, Mark, I always try to do my homework.
Okay.
So I remember, people may or may not remember Representative John Boehner, Republican.
Mm-hmm.
John Boehner left. He left the Congress, and we didn't hear from him. And I'm reading a little blurb about how he basically got the inside track to marijuana dispensaries. This is a guy, if you go and look at his record, he locked up a lot of people on drug reforms. But I'm like, how did he get this thing? And if you do the research, people, if you're a business person, they say almost this business of legal marijuana, they say it's mostly white, mostly cis. They said it's maybe out of 100%, maybe 4% of that is African Americans. So it begins to sound like we were talking about that 1.5 trillion. Here we are at 4%. I know the 4% that smoke weed, right? we are consumers, Mark. We have been around smoking weed for years. Yeah. Bob Marley, Rastafari, we've been around it for years, and now it's mind boggling. It's like, how in the world is this thing now legal? You got people doing damn near life for something for selling weed back in the day. Now it's a business, Mark.
It is
Now,
a huge business. And we're not just talking about the dispensary piece of the business, which I was at the National Cannabis Policy Forum just a couple of weeks ago on Capitol Hill. And first, the main thing what you're talking about, cannabis is medicine. It is healthcare. But when we talk about the policies around cannabis, one thing that we need to get corrected is that you need to make sure that there's equity for people who, I'm going to say first, there's equity and there's expungement. Let's just go with those two terms. And when you talk equity, you're talking making sure that the people who have been locked up for cannabis or have things on their records where they can't get jobs or access to public benefits because they have some sort of cannabis charge in their past when they were teenagers or whatever. But at the same time, in the state of Virginia alone, there will be almost $4 billion in sales, and that's just Virginia, in cannabis with just 8 dispensaries. And this has been going on all over the country. And dispensaries, those are people who have medical cards for cannabis. There's big companies out there. They call them multi-site organizations that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars that are in this business. The Black Weed Show, basically what it does when we premiere our show, it is for people who are in the cannabis business where they have a service or a product and they're trying to target the African-American community, the melanated cannabis world, but these people have all type of things that they're doing. For example, we're talking healthcare, we're talking pharmaceuticals, entertainment, food, Black business, politics, sports, lifestyle, hospitality, travel. There is all kind of vertical and horizontal ways in the cannabis, but the biggest opportunity out there in cannabis is really going to happen in the pharmaceutical market for healthcare. Because a lot of the sort of things that are out there now, opioids are going to go away. They're going to start to use more of what's called cannabinoids that are non-addictive, that help people to relieve pain, relieve anxiety, to get rid of inflammation, for uses for people with PTSD or for people with other different medical challenges. These are the sort of things, and the reason why cannabis has been such has hit the African-American community so hard, because the Nixon administration with the world
I was going to bring that up.
Used that to put African-Americans in jail. Why? Because that's how they were using it for political control. You know, it's kind of like the 13th Amendment, right? Remember, they got rid of slavery in this country, but guess what? There's only one exception to making someone become like a slave, and that's the 13th Amendment. That's called incarceration. So once they put you in jail, they can do whatever they want with you. So if you're controlling the politics in the country, you make something that a particular community is using for both good and not starting any trouble or anything, and you make it illegal, and then you incarcerate them over it. And then you take the incarceration industry and turn that into an industry. And next thing you know, you got people making billions of dollars in the incarceration world. Now that cannabis is legal in like 28 states, making billions of dollars in each of these states, what needs to happen is the equity needs to happen for people where those states where they've made it legal. They need to clear their records with expungements or pardons. And people, if they're going to be a W-2 or if they're going to be have their own LLC and they want to get in the cannabis business, we need to make sure that African Americans are getting their fair share of opportunities, because there's lots of different areas where you can do business. And like, you know, with alcohol, there's bars, there's different liquor, but guess what? Alcohol is used in a lot of other different ways for healthcare and other things. That's why I try to give people that example, give them the example about how hospitals use the pharmaceuticals. whether it's over the counter or whether it's something you have to go to a pharmacist and get the product. And this is what we're talking about with cannabis. And these are the really large opportunities that we need to make sure our community does not miss out on.
Well, I
But
thank
community just wants to talk about all that.
Well, I thank you for clearing that up. Because I came out at the beginning of the show, giving an apology.
Right.
I thank you for clearing that up. I did a little bit of reading since the last time we talked.
Okay.
Because I was inspired. And, I was like, I understand what you're saying. Sometimes you have to take yourself out of a particular type of dogma to understand what people are saying. And
well, that's the same thing. Well,
I was totally cool with it. I mean,
okay.
like I said, I'm totally cool with it. In fact, we want to give quick shout out to Sister Ree out in Houston, Texas. Hope that you're doing well. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to you, Brother Derek and Brother Juwan. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're gonna jump back. I'm gonna close out on the Black Weed Show.
Okay.
But Sister Satana had a question because you're in the tech space. Satana, can you put that question up? Asking about AI.
AI is extremely, it's been out there for a minute now that everybody's kind of heard of the chat GPT that's out there, where people are actually using that as a tool. The artificial intelligence, the reason why it's such a powerful tool, because all of the databases that are locked into it, and with the artificial intelligence, you can actually ask it to do certain things, and it draws on all the information that's out there in the databases that are out there and all the data to actually say, well, write me a particular paper or solve this particular type of problem. And it actually uses the data that's out there in order to solve problems. But in some cases, people are actually using it for things that people think will start to be out of control if we don't put some borders around it in the beginning. Kind of like social media. Social media was a good thing when it first started, and it's still a good thing now in certain ways, but also people have used it for ill. People accuse Facebook of its algorithms, for example, of taking people down rabbit holes that if they ask for something and they say it has to do with white nationalism or something of that nature, it keeps feeding you more information based on what you asked for initially. And therefore, it ends up making people turn into, well, I guess what they call it, flipping them and making them become more violent than what they would regularly be. But the reason why this happens is because with social media, the more things are controversial, the more people click on it. So they keep feeding you more and more controversial information. And next thing you know, people are actually out there doing things that we don't want happening, like on January the 6th. And it's the same fear really with AI.
Let's stay in that space.
Yeah.
We're talking about AI. We're talking about, adopting different technologies.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the consumption of information. We're on the precipice of another election.
Right.
What are you seeing? And when you put the water, the tea leaves in the water, what are you seeing in terms of, I want to say, a voter demographic and a voter behavior? What are you seeing?
Well, I think a lot of people, and the good sister asked a question about AI. The reason why AI, I think, and I'm going back to that for a minute, Preacher, is because just like social media, the AI tools could be used for ill as well as good. So rather than having people, for example, a lot of the younger African Americans think that President Biden and the Vice President Kamala Harris are not doing as much as they can for the African American community. Well, partially there's a grain of truth to that, but they've done way more for the African American community. More sisters and women and African American women have been appointed as judges. More African Americans are available to receive benefits that have come through I keep getting the name of it, but the rescue plan that the
Okay,
president.
American Rescue Plan. Yep.
But the other thing that I wanted to say is that there's lowest unemployment that's been out there for African Americans ever is down at 3.5%. But specifically, what more can be done is we need to make sure that these college loans get done. We need to make sure that we get the John Lewis voting rights bill passed. And we also need to make sure that these other things happen. But all those things happen by getting the voting rights bill passed and making sure people come out and vote. Because when they come out and vote, and we don't have situations like happened last time with the George Floyd bill and with the voting rights bill, we had two Democratic senators that basically flipped on us, Sinema and this other guy from West Virginia, Manchin. So we need to elect more Democrats. So the next time all this stuff gets signed by Biden, and also the stuff for college loans that gets signed, and more appropriations for African American business.
So let me ask you this. Let me ask you this question.
Go ahead.
As you're a strategist,
yeah,
you're a creative. With this election, so what do Democrats need to do to win? And I'm talking about aggressively. What do they need to pursue to win in this upcoming election? In Philadelphia, the mayor is a black female, not the mayor, but she's nominated. She will be the mayor. Black female. They were able to coalesce and they're building that coalition in Pennsylvania. What do we need to be doing now in terms of these red states, in terms of a voter demographic? You know, there's a report out that a lot of the base of the Republican Party, which was the white uneducated, they're going away now. That number is dropping. So going to the polls now, you have a different constituency of people who are going. A lot of younger voters, a lot more educated, and looking for pathways to make sure that their vote is counted, but even more so to understand the whole election process. What do Democrats need to be doing?
The Democrats need to make sure that they're making sure people are registered to vote, and there's a good get out the vote GOTV effort. We need to win elections. We need to elect at least 2 to 3 more senators on top of what we have to cancel out those other 2 senators that stuck it to us. And we also need to get control back of the House of Representatives so we can control the legislative process, which is the money. And I tell people all the time, if they forgot from their 12th grade government class, you have 3 separate branches of government. Right now, you have the legislative branch, which controls the money. You have the judicial branch, which controls the courts, and you have the executive branch, which is responsible for carrying out the laws. We have the executive branch. We have part of the legislative branch. We still control the Senate, but we need to get the House of Representatives back. And of course, we're at a deficit on the Supreme Court. But the good thing is, to answer your question, is what they need to do is come out and vote. If people come out and vote, and the last part I'll put in, I know we've only got a couple of minutes left. What is the ask? Make sure you hold the politicians accountable. You can't just be happy you got a black president like Obama. You got to be like, yeah, we got you, Obama. What we really want is these 5 other things, and make sure those things get delivered. More government contracts, the money that's supposed to go to parents and to students to pay off their college debt, whatever it is, right? Make sure that gets done. So when you vote, you get something for your vote financially and as well as policy-wise, and hold them accountable.
All right, Mark. Listen, we're up on that last minute mark, brother.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show. We have some people that want to make some money with you on government contracts. Where do they go? Where can we
contact me? Preacher, please have them contact me. I think I put my email addresses out there, and I put my
we're going to tell people to go to
cell phone number. So
we're going to tell people to go to permissibleLaughter@gmail.com, and then we'll put you in touch with Mark. Is that fair enough? There we go. Contact us at permissibleLaughter@gmail.com, and we will put you in contact our dear brother Mark Cannady. If I said it was a pleasure, I'm understating this, man. It was an experience, a beautiful experience, man. Thank you so much for being on our show. Inshallah, we'll see you soon. Peace and blessings to you and your family. Give your queen my salams. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That's our show for today. Shout out.
Thank you for having me on.
Peace, everybody.